Hi there. Today I've been tasting with Pierre Fabre from Château Mont-Redon in Chateauneuf-du-Pape. They're some really highly reputed producers from the southern Rhône in France, and this is their top wine, Le Plateau de Mourredon, Chateauneuf-du-Pape, 2016. Pierre's family have been involved with this estate for over 100 years, I believe, and it's really a historic site for viticulture. I mean, grapes have been recorded as growing here back in the 1300s, so there's been a long history of viticulture. They're fortunate to have a large area of vines that was mostly planted in the 1930s and the 1950s, so are now good and mature, and they have a number of the different terroirs from within Chateauneuf-du-Pape, all in a single large area of vines. But within that area, one of the, I suppose, the gems of that is the plateau that is stony, stone over clay soils. So there's heat being reflected onto the vines, but also there's good water availability thanks to the clay. And in hot years, this can produce exceptional wines. And so in the best years, they just make this wine as a single vineyard wine, I suppose, as a special cuvee. The wine gets more oak aging than most of the wines. I believe it's about sort of 50% new oak. And then after it's been aged in oak, goes back into tank for a year to 15 months to settle, but to settle in a situation where it's not under the influence of oxygen. So to retain some of the fresh fruitiness while it's settling. The blend is principally Grenache, 60% with 40% of Syrah. So richness and gutsiness and fruit from the Grenache, and body and structure from the Syrah. So let's have a look at it, shall we? First of all, we've got an opaque ruby to black red, really, colour. We've got a wine that says it's 15% alcohol on the label, and there are tears very apparent running down the glass the moment I swirl it there. So let's look at the aromas. The aromas have clearly there's red fruit in there, but actually what's to the fore is savoury, leathery, spicy notes, maybe slightly meaty notes to the red fruit as well. It's red fruit sort of raspberry through to mulberry sort of notes, almost I suppose also to a dark red cherry note as well. So let's have a taste. Tasting that, that's a dense, velvety structured wine. Though the fruit has a sort of a chocolatey texture. To say chocolatey in terms of flavour would be wrong, because that would be suggesting some sort of sweetness or richness. There's a savoury note in this as well, a sort of slightly earthy, but also with juicy black fruit coming through. The wine's fruit is still, quite closed. This is relatively young, despite the fact it's 2016. But there's a pepperiness to it. You're seeing slight notes of cedar, but all that is beautifully integrated with the fruit. The fact that it's 15% alcohol, again, isn't particularly obvious from tasting it, because the fruit is sufficient to stop the alcohol from dominating the finish there. The acidity is in balance. It's not particularly mouth-watering, but there's a lovely freshness to the fruit that suggests it's got a nice balance there. And the flavours, there's a clean, spicy red fruit note to the finish that's persisting really well. I suspect as this wine opens up, that will really extend, and we'll see a lot more of that. But for the moment, a little bit brooding, real sort of core of dense, dark, licorice-like fruit, with a slightly bitter note, I suppose, leading on to a savoury touch for the finish. The wine has good length, fantastic intensity, and is probably one to come back to in 10 years time or so. So if you're interested in a relatively expensive but a Chateauneuf-du-Pape to age and that will be spectacular in its old age, I would highly suggest that you look at Le Plateau from Mont-Redon. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you found this interesting, and do join us again. Bye now.